You don't have to be moving out to enjoy this episode. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Corey.
And this week we will be discussing Billy Joel's 1977 album, The Stranger. Kind of a random pick, not tied to anything, but the reason we're doing it is because we both had the fortunate opportunity to see Billy Joel this past weekend because he came to Baltimore's M&T Bank Stadium where the Ravens play, co-headlining with Stevie Nicks, and it was a fantastic concert from both of them, but we wanted to share our experience of the show with you from at least, and we figured, well, great time to do a Billy Joel album since we haven't done him yet.
Yeah, coming out of that concert, when we said let's do Joel going into the concert, I was like, all right, but coming out of that concert, this was a nice. It was just a super fitting time. You're right. It was a beautiful album after a crazy beautiful concert. If you guys have not seen Billy Joel, this was my first time. I'd always heard. I knew he was a showman. I knew he was a beast, a legend, a living legend, but hell of a show. And it was a co-headliner show, so I expected a little less. Not as far as his energy or musicianship, but I didn't expect the amount of songs we got and was super happy about that.
Yeah, no, he was up there for 2 hours. He did a whole set and he did a lot of songs. He might do a few more during some of his other shows, but he gave us a lot in that time. He did 21 songs.
It was amazing.
Not nothing. And Stevie Nicks did 15. So yeah, we got close to 40 songs all night.
And how old is Billy Joel now?
He's 74. He's 74.
He didn't look one bit of 74.
No.
It was the coldest night we've had so far in Baltimore. And of course, we're in Raven Stadium, so the wind's going, It's going to get cold in there. And Billy Joel's in his scarf and the gray pea coat. Oh, man, he was looking good. But he didn't look, I'll tell you what, he didn't look any bit of that. And he moved like he was 40.
Yeah.
That's a huge compliment there,
Yeah.
He is amazing.
Yes, I'd seen Billy Joel twice before this. It had been a while, though. It was like that. The last time was in 2016, and the energy this time was on another level. Like, it was definitely the best performance I've seen of his, because I don't even remember him getting up from the piano when I saw him before, but this time he did at times.
That surprised me, and then if I remember correctly, and I had my fair share of drinks that day, but if I remember correctly, the first time he got up, he started dancing and like Mick Jagger, and
yep.
they did a Stones song, which was amazing, or at least a little snippet of a Stones song.
Yeah, so. He did a bit of Start Me Up for us.
But he danced around the stage, and he moved across the stage. He didn't just dance in place; like he was getting at it.
Oh no. And his band was killer too.
Oof, man, they were killer.
Especially, there was a woman. I'm so mad I can't remember her name right now. But
the lady who did In the Middle of the Night.
Yes.
Oh man, that was amazing.
Wait, yeah. Oh yes, her name is Crystal. It says on the set list. I'm glad that I have that. So. Yes, in the middle of the River of Dreams, she did a rendition of River Deep Mountain High. That was amazing. And she was introduced as playing multiple instruments. I mean, well, this lady's on another level. She's incredible. She was the highlight of his band for me. She was fantastic.
Yes, she was everywhere, man. She was playing hand percussion. She was everywhere. It was amazing.
Yes, but we're not here to talk about the River of Dreams, really, because that was the only song from that album he did. But rather, to amplify our experience, we'll be doing one of the most represented albums at the concert, which is The Stranger. He did 4 songs from it this night. I'm kind of surprised he didn't do even more, actually, but...
Yeah, especially the way this album is packed with songs that have resonated for him.
Yeah, this is practically a greatest hits album, but it did take some time to get there. So, believe it or not, 1977, Billy Joel was not really a popular artist. His only really major hit up to that point had been Piano Man. And he was underselling for Columbia Records. His prior album, Turnstiles, had only peaked at number 122 on the Billboard 200. And these albums that weren't as successful did end up selling a lot more later on because of the success here, but it just wasn't sure. It's like, why is Billy Joel doing this? Like, what's he gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
Because he it didn't seem like he was a somebody.
I feel, and we're going to talk about it a bunch, but I feel like that chip is on his shoulder in his creative process. And that's why, for me, he relates to the everyman so much, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. But he just had a lot of killer songs in here, and the big sticking point for him was he really wanted to record with his touring band, and a lot of producers just didn't want to do that with him. And so he was getting rid of people in the team who wouldn't let him do that. He wouldn't even record with George Martin, the Beatles producer, because of the fact that he wouldn't let him play with his band. He said, no, you need session musicians.
Is that because I should know the answer to this, but maybe you do? Is that because the labels are hiring these session musicians on a multi-album contract kind of thing? Or is that because they feel they know they're going to do the job?
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how, if musicians are contracted to a particular label or not. That's not something I've really looked for.
Good for him, though. Good for him. Stand behind your band, especially if you're the everyman piano man. Like, literally, that's what the world knows of him at this point. This would always seem to be a dive into his own early, just playing bar piano. So that's what the world knows of him. Good for him for sticking up and being like, he hasn't sold millions of records yet, but he's still standing behind his band. That's amazing.
Yeah, because he was a decent concert draw. His live shows were well regarded by this point. Still, he even got to play Carnegie Hall in the summer before this album was released.
There you go.
So he was not a nobody, but he was not the superstar he would become as a result of this album. And so he ended up going with Phil Ramone, not related to the band, the Ramones, but a major label guy, tons of credits. At this point, his most well-known production recently was Paul Simon's Still Crazy After All These Years, which had won a Grammy for Album of the Year. So Billy Joel did get a legitimate big producer, maybe not the Beatles producer, but certainly a name to have. And it was the beginning of a long association, fortunately. And so, yeah, the album was released in September of 1977, and it was a bit slow going, but it was a very steady seller throughout 1978. And at this point, it has gone diamond. So over 10 million copies sold in the United States. Actually, it's now 11 times platinum.
Wow.
Yeah, not surprising. And it's his only studio album to have done this. A few others have come close, but not quite. Though they might in the near future. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's a legendary album. This is one. You know what? I'm gonna first hot tea take of the show today. I'm gonna say this was the hardest album to take myself out of and try to listen to it like it was the first time I had heard the album, because it's every track on this album is automatic switch your brain into classic mode. Songs that you've lived by and loved for so many years. It's such a great album, man. Such a great album.
Yeah, these songs, I mean, this album was released before both of us were born, but these songs have just not gone anywhere. This practically is a greatest hits album, because even the songs that weren't singles have become staples in their own right, being featured in movies, shows, getting radio play. So this just ended up being that perfect recipe for Billy Joel to become the Billy Joel we know him today. Today.
New York's golden boy.
Yeah,
that's real.
That was him. That was Billy Joel in 1977, the beginning of where he is today, because we don't have him playing stadiums and MSG every month without the stranger.
Heard that.
But it was him who got him there. It was going to happen. And what I find so interesting is him and Elton John are very much compared a lot, and they have I mean, they've toured together, they get all these things, but really, Joel took off as Elton John was going into a bit of a lull, which I find interesting because Elton John's classic period really ended in 1976, while Joel was still the up and comer. John was on top of the charts, but at this point, we see a big shift, and I've always found that interesting.
Yeah, it's so wild to think. I'm trying to think of reasons why, other than the music, just where America was. But for me, he transcends time, really. Like he's a timeless character. It's and being such a powerful singer-songwriter, it's so wild to see a timeless character like that. I'm gonna say you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that doesn't know at least one Billy Joel song, or more so, anyone who doesn't like Billy Joel.
I mean,
You know,
he does have his detractors. They exist, but his songs are beloved by many, and that's really what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, the detractors are still listening and tapping their toes to Only the Good Die Young, or there's nobody out there that hasn't had a moment with Billy Joel's music. It's such a huge accomplishment.
Most definitely. And yeah, with that being said, I'm ready to get into this one.
Heck yeah, let's go.
Before you forget, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you're listening, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon. We are on all of them. And also follow us on social media at Turntables and Tea Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and at Turntables Tea on the app formerly known as Twitter X. That's where you'll get updates on all of our latest episodes and whatever the heck else we feel like posting. All right, so the album begins with Moving Out, Anthony's song. This has been described as a commentary on upward mobility. If that's moving up, then I'm moving out. This was a single, unsurprisingly. I think it was the second single. I'm so unprepared today. But second single, and Billy Joel has said that it was inspired by his working class background, which you can definitely hear. And I think that's a big part of what makes the song so authentic. Like when I hear this, I really just imagine that Italian New York scene, even though Italian's not really Billy Joel's heritage, his is more German, but I just can really imagine that. Like you can picture a music video for this song in your head just listening to it. And on top of that, it's catchy as anything. I mean, you can't get this one stuck in out of your head. You're just going to be, you see a Cadillac, you're going to sing Cadillac, ack.
You will. I'm right with you on that. And it opens the album with such a really, like you said, true and character-driven piece. It seems this whole composition seems so lived in, and that's for me why it hits so automatic. I mean, outside of the music itself, just the lyrics in here, it's so lived in, it's so real, it's so, your local cop, your local guy. He was living it, but he was also mad at it, and that's where it came from. He was looking at these people working tirelessly, and we see this come up a lot in this album, of him being like, stop running the rat race you have your whole life. But more so here, seeing people in his community trying to work nonstop just to get better things and move into different areas of town and whatnot. And he understood, or it seems so to me, that it wasn't all about that. And if that's it, he's out of there, But as far as a musical composition, not only is it an earwig, but it is so almost borderline for me, like theater, as far as the way the music goes through this. It's characteristic of Joel in a lot, especially a lot on this album. But this one, man, you have that syncopated rhythm the whole way through, and it's that hustle and bustle going on. And it never really leaves until the car starts, which is genius. You get that New York feel. You get the same kind of New York feel that I get from listening to Nas talk, New York State of Mind, that kind of lived in because you were there type stuff. You don't get that all the time. You get that from great singer-songwriters like Billy Joel.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned the theater because Billy Joel actually credits the theater for helping the song stay popular throughout the years because the choreographer Twyla Tharp took Billy Joel's songs and created a musical about them entitled Moving Out after the song. And he said, like, she really thought of it in a way that I never would have. Like, what happens to Anthony after he works at the grocery store? And so, and it's been a successful musical. I don't think it's running anywhere currently. If anybody out there is listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it is. But it's helped the song be enduring. And it was the second song that he did at the concert, and a great place for that, for sure, right after My Life. Both great album opening tracks, and to hear one after the other, I think was a great starter for it all.
Oh, yeah. We're going back. We have a whole podcast that we can do on that. But yeah, this is amazing opener anytime, but especially on this album.
Oh yeah, definitely one of the best album openers of this decade, easily, of the 70s.
Yeah, that saxophone piece in here lives in my head rent free. It has for years upon years.
Yes, well, definitely an all-time classic sax solo for sure. And with that, I mean, what else is there to say about Moving Out? It's just a classic all around. But we are going to move on to the next song, which is our title track, The Stranger, which Billy Joel hasn't even said exactly what inspired it. He said it could be like, if you could be interpreted as someone who's schizophrenic, which I choose not to go down that route because that's a really depressing route to go down. But it could very well be about his relationship at this time, is I think the most common interpretation amongst people, amongst the Joel fans. We'll talk more about his wife on other songs here, but overall, this is, this is just one of those songs that really fits its title. It has this somewhat ominous piano intro, and then we go into this steady city feel. Like, it's hard to describe it if you're not listening to it, but it's a very steady groove and somewhat ominous, but not enough so that it's going to take you out of the fact that this is a Billy Joel album. It's still in that, but I've always enjoyed this song. I've always thought it was a very just neat song to listen to. It's hard to, I guess we all have a stranger in ourselves, I guess. I think everyone can relate to it too. So there's that.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. For me, that's the song. Is we all put on these masks regardless of what they're made of or what they do throughout life. Or I'll say everyone in this song, but it's relatable because ultimately it happens. I think the stranger is everyone, but also the stranger here, when he's saying, the stranger might not always be wrong or might not always be evil, is really the truth of the everyone behind it, and hiding behind these masks. It reminds me, going through these listens, maybe it's just these wild parallels, but it reminds me of the Fugees, The Mask. It was that same type of sentiment there, where it was like, just take the bull crap off. But here, this mask, even though it might be bull crap sometimes, it's not always, and it is the stranger, and the stranger is ever present. As crazy as that rant just sounded, that's the way this song has always made me feel. This opening riff, though, man, this mimic style of piano, then followed by this shadow of this whistle, it's cinematic, man. I'll tell you, it's not only is it cinematic, but recording a whistle, especially a melodic whistle like that, is a feat that is not it's not attainable by the everyman. It is a tough one there. So kudos to him on that. But you're right. You get this again. You get this city feel. You get this lived-in feel throughout this composition. I love the bridge when it breaks off and it's just this triangle ringing in the background. I love that. We get that, I think, right around the 2 minute mark. That's always been a cool piece of this composition for me. It's just a beautiful. You said what did you say, chilling or
Ominous a bit.
ominous. It does feel ominous, but it automatically makes you feel. I don't know if it's the human aspect of that whistle or that even on the piano piece, it just something about this song always gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. I feel like it's cinematic. I feel like this would like soundtrack like a black and white detective movie or something.
I always think of the original live action Incredible Hulk where Bruce Banner is walking away. I always picture that when he does this whistle. It's not maybe if I'm reaching it, it's sort of the same melodically, but it always reminds me of that for some reason. It is definitely cinematic in some way.
Yeah. And it was a single in Japan where it made it up to all the way to number 2 on the charts. Not a single here in the US, but still a really beloved album track. Again, like this is a song that's really well known, even if it wasn't a single. And not the first example of that on this album, not even the most well-known example of it. But before we get to any more non-singles, we have to talk about the single, which is the biggest of them all, Just the Way You Are. He wrote this song for his wife at the time, Elizabeth, who was also his manager. So definitely an interesting relationship right there. And I started reading this biography of Billy Joel by Fred Schurz. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And in that story, he at a restaurant said to her, like, I wrote you this song for your birthday. And she asked, so I get the publishing too, right?
Man.
And he thought she might have been joking, but it sounds like no, she was not. And she was not happy to not get the publishing. Because this song was a massive hit, but Billy didn't hear it that way. He did say in hindsight it should have told him the marriage was doomed, but he was just focused on getting this record out. And him and the band, they thought it was like a girly song. They were like, this doesn't fit in with what we're doing. We don't need this on the album. But during the sessions for it, Phil Ramone championed it a bit more, and he actually had 2 singers, Phoebe Snow and Linda Ronstadt, listen in on this, and they both told him he'd be crazy to not include it on the album, with Ronstadt flat out saying that's a hit record. And he just said, well, shows you what I know about making a hit record. But he knew to listen to the pros, and he did, and this was a huge hit. This made it all the way up to number 3 on the Hot 100 in 1978, and it's become really one of the most well-known 20th century love songs at this point. It is interesting, though. It's not one he plays often live, and it's not even that he dislikes it. It's just not for him to do, I guess. But when you're Billy Joel, you have enough songs to choose from that you can get away with not playing this one, as popular as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta imagine that it's not his favorite song to play because a part of him lives inside of it, inside of his classic singer-songwriter. This song was written for his ex, and it was a divorce that he wasn't happy about, regardless of how amicable they say it might have been. But irregardless, it is the classic love song for me. It's up there, definitely top 5 love songs of all time, in my opinion. It has everything a classic love song needs. It's got some beautiful piano, it's got beautiful saxophones, that slow sax. I mean, Billy Joel's playing on the Fender Rhodes here, so it might come off as a synthesizer, but it's more so like a piano that's using, instead of like hammering on strings or hammering on wires, it's using strings inside, and that's where we get that unique sound. It's such a cool, wild composition with like the backing vocals. For me, they're almost like haunting, and it's really like a dreamlike. The percussion is super dreamlike for me, but it's always something that has stuck with me. And the percussion more so has stuck with me throughout. And it's always one where I go back and every single time I pick out a new little thing. And I love that about this song. Yeah, man, classic set the mood song right here. This was the mold. This was the mold. You can hear so much inspiration throughout love songs, especially in that era after this, in my opinion, too. It's a beautiful one.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting about the composition. I do think it's a neat one, and I think that because of it, even though this is a love song and most of the songs there really aren't, and if they are, they're more cynical than this one, let's say. I feel
Yeah.
like that composition helps it fit in on the album. Like Billy says, this doesn't fit in, but I think what they were working on musically helped it fit in and not detract from it, even if it was more romantic than the other songs here. But because this is still Billy Joel, the angry young man, it's not complete sap because of
Yeah.
who's writing it. So yeah, I like Just the Way You Are. Not everybody does. I think it's a song considered to be overplayed by a lot of people, but I've always enjoyed it. But we are going to go into a very different mode with our next track. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. This is a multi-part suite actually inspired by the Abbey Road medley was the which I can definitely hear because it is very much different vignettes in one.
Have you ever seen him and Paul break this down?
I have not
Oh,
actually.
I got to send you the video. It is phenomenal. It is wild when he breaks it apart and you just chuckle listening to it. It's cool.
Yeah, it is quite a song. Like there's just multiple parts to it, of course. Like we've got bottle of red, bottle of white in this Italian restaurant setting where he was having dinner with his manager, and that inspired him to give that the setting. And the first part of it that really predates this album is the Brenda and Eddie story about these people who were popular in high school and like what became of them. And that part actually dates back to the very early 70s, but it was its own thing and didn't all come together until now. And it was originally just called The Ballad of Brenda and Eddie. And it takes up most of the song. And he also talks about himself a bit with like things are okay with me these days. But just yeah, these different pieces to it all. And it's like these are disparate ideas, but yet somehow they just beautifully come together in a way that I mean, as I'm speaking, it doesn't make sense, but when you listen to it, it's perfect.
Perfect is the word there, man. I mean, how could it not be any more perfect? This is the linchpin of the album, in my opinion.
Definitely. Much of the way like the Abbey Road medley is that this just has Billy Joel kind of all in one, I feel like. And he's even called it his favorite song that he did, which isn't hard to believe at all. I mean, because it's quite an accomplishment and never a single, but obviously immediately picked out by people because it's like, yeah, too long for top 40, yes, but there's no ignoring the craft of it. And it was ranked in 2021 number 324 on the greatest songs of all time by Rolling Stone.
Has to be. I mean, it's a mini movie in a song. You know,
Yep.
you get a little intro, you get two high school friends meeting in an Italian restaurant, and then at 144 we get this transition into this Dixieland jazz where they're just talking about how their lives are going. It's so cool, man. Billy went on to say it was 7 takes with him and other musicians putting together like 3 compositions. You can see it, but I love how it's seamless, so to speak, because you know they went through it and really hammered it all the way out. But I almost skipped over it. You cannot ever skip over the piano solo in this one for me. I'll go out on a limb and say it's my favorite Billy Joel piano solo, period. Right before the Ballad of Brenda and Eddie strikes off, he murders it like nobody else does, and I love that. And then here we go, character driven. It's wild, like to really look at the way he writes these stories, these musical stories. We've gone now from looking into an Italian restaurant to being inside of a conversation with 2 high school friends to I think still in that same conversation that I've always taken it that way, but now into this story of old high school sweethearts that unfortunately didn't make it all the way through. But it's such a beautiful, beautiful composition. This has always been such a mind blowing song for me coming from him. It really does. It goes to another theater level for me, or just a very cinematic level of writing, and that's what he does. That's what he gets down on. This is and it's the end of the first half of this album. Like, I can only imagine getting this day one and that being the end of the first side, and me like, holy shit, flip this over, let's go. It's such a wild piece, man.
Yeah. And I mean, this song, so interestingly, I don't know if everybody knows this, but the last album that Billy Joel recorded of new material was actually an all classical music album, which seems like a stretch, but when you think of a song like this, it really isn't.
Yeah.
In terms of a multi-part composition, but this is his longest non-classical song to this date. But I think it's played at all of his live performances. Certainly was done when we saw it.
Yeah, he's a studied, beautiful composer. Underneath all that New York Bronx mystique or showmanship, there is a genius composer underneath, and it shows. Yeah, and the classical stuff that just is another showing of that talent that's there under this machismo from the Bronx.
Yeah, but yeah, just what a wild and beautiful song.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, we do flip side two over, and you might wonder, well, how are we going to continue from that, our 7.5 minute epic song? But we are going to. And the first track to do that is Vienna, which my favorite comment of the whole concert was Billy Joel introducing the song, saying, "Song I'm about to do for you was not a big hit. This is Vienna." And I was just done, because it's like, okay, everybody knows Vienna, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's actually I'm reading this here, his fourth most streamed song on Spotify.
Wow. That's cool.
And our friend April even said, me like, this has been in a lot of movies. Like, yeah, I remember it was in 13 going on 30 specifically.
Heard that.
With Jennifer Garner, which that has a great soundtrack, that movie, by the way. Not a bad song on that one, but yeah, it was inspired by the town of Vienna, and it's very piano based. I guess that's more of that classical influence, but I feel like musically it's kind of a somewhat standard piano ballad, but I think it's a really beautifully done song lyrically. Like, just to give that, but it's like, slow down, you're doing fine. Vienna waits for you. Just what a beautiful sentiment to put in a song. Like, just to take some time and smell the roses, but in beautiful poetry, I think, but not in a way that's hard to understand. And it's not hard to tell why this song is still so beloved all this time later. And it's a great movie soundtrack song too, so why wouldn't we use it in films?
It is. And the composition, I'm with you there. As far as the musical composition goes, it is sort of standard. And standing alone, it wouldn't jump out and bite you. But the way that he writes and makes that sentiment that you were talking about, the slow down, really, this metaphor for old age is genius. For me, I say that this is an exact parallel to the start of side one of the album, except saying the same thing, except this way, saying it in a softer way. It's still this like, calm down. You don't have to push everything into a couple years of life. Like, Vienna will wait for you. This old, beautiful Austrian town, known for its age and beauty, is gonna wait for you. And I can't drive it home enough how much that parallel sticks the landing here. Opening up with such a soft vibe on this side, but saying such a powerful making such a powerful statement inside of the opener. It's a good one, man. I think it was tongue in cheek when he said that. I think that was him messing around as far as it's not a big hit, but it definitely is for me.
Yeah. Oh no, and hearing him say Vienna, everybody in the stadium went wild to hear, like, yes, Vienna.
Oh yeah,
Like this was a
was
song
awesome.
people were waiting to hear, and I'm really, and it's funny. The previous two times I saw him, he did this thing where he said, "I'm going to give you all a fielder's choice. You can do Summer Highland Falls from Turnstiles or Vienna," and obviously Vienna won both times.
I heard that.
I mean, I felt like Billy, you really didn't make that too complicated of a choice.
Yeah, for real. He was not trying to play the latter.
Yeah, clearly not. It's like, are you sure you were even prepared to do the ladder with that? Because, I mean,
That's the showman he is. He's gambling on that.
yeah.
But
But
good gamble.
I was kind of, no, I was glad this time he just came out and did it. I was like, yeah, don't have suspense for us. You're going to do Vienna. Come on.
Heard that.
And he did the same thing with The Longest Time. He had it up against like Keeping the Faith. Obviously, The Longest Time won.
Yeah,
Like,
he knows.
I'm glad he just dropped that act a bit. I was like, don't play games with us, you
There
know?
you go. There you go. He only had 2 hours. He had to give it to us straight.
Good. Give it to us straight. Just do your thing. And but I'll never complain about hearing Vienna ever. So what a great song. But and another song that I will not complain about hearing ever is Only the Good Die Young. A more humorous side of Billy, but also the most controversial song here. So this was a single in February of 1978. And it actually didn't do that well at first, but some religious groups and folks heard this song and were like, this is really offensive because he's lusting after a Catholic schoolgirl. And Billy Joel has said himself, really, it's a pro-lust song, not an anti-Catholic song. And also, the guy doesn't get the girl.
That's
Which
the
is,
thing. I'm
yeah,
biting my tongue over here because I don't want to go off on one of my everybody knows I'm gonna do. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Are you joking me? This is the song you chose to go up against? Like, oh man, this is the hill that they wanted to die on. I love it. I love it. He doesn't even get the girl. He doesn't even get what he wants in the song. That sort of sounded a little worse when it came out of my mouth just now, but like it's such it's such a beautiful musical composition. You know, it's a toe tapper jam piece. I don't care who you are, but it's totally not that song. It's don't try to make it something it's not. Good for him keeping his head above that, but like get out of here. I mean, all it did is boost album sales from what I read, you know. But
yeah,
get out of here with
became a
that.
hit.
Go find some songs that are truly effed up and fly your flag on that. Don't fly your flag on New York's Golden Boy.
I think the furors died down by this point, at least, though, because you gotta. But it's funny, actually, when he appeared as the musical guest on SNL, the producers were asking him to not play this song, but he did it anyway.
Oh,
but
shit.
Billy Joel was actually the least of their problems because right before he played this song, he saw a verbal altercation between Chevy Chase and Bill Murray. So,
oh wow,
SNL had their own problems that were not related to this song. But yeah, the one story my mother tells me was she went to Catholic high school and this song was banned at her prom.
Really?
Yeah,
I never knew about this whole deal until reading up on this album. That I don't know, man. It seems like a reach.
It's so tongue in cheek. That's the thing. Like,
yeah. I'm not even trying to think with the brain of now because now it doesn't. No one even looks at it twice. But back then, I don't know. It's a tough one. I have to ask my folks about that one. That's wild to hear that it was banned from a prom.
Yeah, it was controversial enough for that, but
this is a radio staple now.
Oh yeah, you know? And I mean, my mom's always said, like, it's a growing up Catholic. She always said, no, this is a joke song. It's not meant to be taken seriously.
It's a party song. You know what I'm saying? Like the horns are blaring, the sax is going nuts. I mean, it's try not tapping your toe or putting a smile on to Only the Good Die Young, you
Oh
know?
yeah. And what was pretty cool, he did. I think this one is done at every show too, understandably. But the times I saw him before, it was part of the encore, but this time it was in the middle of the show. But I thought it was a nice pick me up after some slower songs,
Agreed.
and was well placed in there. And
Same on this album. It's perfectly
yes,
paced. Coming off Vienna, because you left flipping over from Italian restaurant. So you get Vienna and you're like, okay, it's still a beautiful song, but it's slow. And then boom, you're right back into rocking. And even rocking with that acoustic guitar over top. I love that. I love that
yeah,
sound.
yeah. And interestingly, I read this was originally written as a reggae style composition, which is weird to think about, but
That would be wild.
that was fortunately changed during conception. The story goes that Billy's drummer, Liberty DeVito, actually said, "Are you really gonna do it like this? Are you gonna sing in an accent? Like you're from Long Island."
Oh,
Like,
I would have paid money to see that.
oh yeah, if I could be a fly on the wall for the recording of this song.
Billy, if you're listening, add that into your MSG repertoire. Just throw
Yeah.
it up there one random night for some beautiful folks to see.
The reggae version of Only
Oh,
the Good Die Young.
how amazing would that be? Just sitting in Madison Square on a Friday night and then seeing, oh, that would be super cool. That's a wild tidbit. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
But I'm glad it didn't turn out that way. I think I love this like old timey rock and roll kind of style to it. I think it fits the song perfectly. And I mean, I think it's a funny song. These are very clever lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No way around it, Catholic
I mean,
Church. Calm down there.
yeah. Yeah. I'm counting on my rosary to this song because it's a banger. I'm counting on my rosary, thanking God for Billy Joel. That's
Heard
what
that.
I'll
There
be
you go.
doing.
There you go. I like it.
Hopefully, no one comes to bite my head off for that.
There you go.
But the party is going to stop again, I'm afraid. To slow it down for our cynical love song, "She's Always a Woman." This is most definitely about his wife. And he wrote this because like he knew that his wife was a hard ass. Like she was very tough in business and she negotiated on his behalf, often successfully, but it did rub people the wrong way. And she was not popular amongst everybody. And this song, he was saying, like, I know how she is, but she's always a woman to me, and I love her. And so, definitely one of the darkest love songs ever written. It's like, this woman you're describing sounds really manipulative and horrible, but yet you still love her. And because of that, there's people, this is another controversial song. People have seen it as misogynistic. And I think if you, without context, maybe you could think that, but I don't think, I think it's just about a particular kind of person that I think everyone encounters in their lives, whether we are in a relationship with them or not.
I always saw it the other way, as far as not so much. I can see the cynical with context now, but for me, this was always a neat way to imagine love. For me, that's how I used to take it. It was more so the faults didn't outweigh the womanhood of this woman that he's imagining through this narrative. But misogynistic is another. It's a real reach for me. I would like to. I'll look that. I didn't see the misogynistic stuff. Where are you going off of that? You know, where are you basing your argument there? I'll look back. I'm not saying it's not there for somebody to interpret. It's art, and we always talk about the beauty of it being interpreted however it is. But that seems like a reach for me.
I mean, yeah, I guess everybody has different experiences to interpret these songs however they want. I was kind of surprised to not hear this one at the concert.
I was looking forward to hearing this one. I love
Yeah.
this song.
Yeah, because whenever I heard it before, it was a real showstopper, and it was a legit hit for him. Number 17 on the Hot 100, higher than Only the Good Die Young, actually.
It's such a beautiful piece, man. It's put together. This is another one of these genius composition moments when you look deep, in my opinion, because You get that just naked Billy Joel voice with a very tiny accompaniment of the piano early on here. It really is just what you want from a singer songwriter, in my opinion. You get that beauty, and then he pairs this. So I thought this song was in like a traditional 3/4, like a waltz would be, and it is, but without going too far into it, it always was this beautiful waltz for me that he was doing while he was imagining this girl, and it's there. And then you pair this waltz feel with this feminine sound of the flute here, and it dazzles as a composition for me. I've always truly loved this song. I was a little bit bummed we didn't even talk about that we didn't get to see this, but this is that jam. It doesn't have to be fast paced. It really it carries the weight the rest of the album carries without having to be in your face. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and I also want to say one last thing about this song. I really enjoy his vocal performance on it because I think the sincerity really comes through more than anything, and I think it helps ground the song.
It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely a classic, and a deserved one for sure. And now we're going to go on to probably the least known song on this album, if there is one. Get It Right the First Time, which is basically, yeah, you gotta get it right when you meet somebody the first time. That's the whole concept of the song. I would say it's like a mid-tempo kind of joint. It's in the in-between of Only the Good Die Young and She's Always a Woman, beat-wise. This is, I'm afraid, the Gun to the Head song. It's not a bad song by any means. It's fine, but in comparison to the rest of this, it's like a B-side song. I mean, it's catchy. It can get stuck in your head. It still has that going for it. But just after all of these songs that we've heard so far, it just doesn't stack up to them. I feel like on a weaker album, it could very well be a highlight of the album. But this is The Stranger we're dealing with. And here, it's the Gun to the Head for me.
Yeah, we get this funky opening. Even with the flutes, it has a funkiness of it, and then we transition at 1 minute into this bossa nova type feel from the funk. But I'm with you. As beautiful and well written as this song is, like on paper, it doesn't carry the weight of the rest of the album does. I can see where it could be a levity piece coming out of She's Always a Woman and being the penultimate track. And I did read that Joel didn't have a lot of songs to work with, to pick and choose from for this. It's not a terrible song, but it's not even anywhere near a crappy song. Exactly what you said. It rings true for this, as far as it could be a hit somewhere else, but unfortunately it's up with a lot of stuff here. And for me, the only job it got right is the little bit of levity we get leaving this album.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not sure we even needed it quite, because I think the closing track would have fit just fine after She's Always a Woman, because It's another more somewhat slower meditative piece, but with a bit more of a gospel influence, that it being Everybody Has a Dream. The gospel feeling's the real takeaway from this. It has that lovely choir of voices, one of whom is Phoebe Snow, who we mentioned earlier. And this one, I think it's a song like everybody's kind of, to quote another song about dreams, everybody's looking for something. Like everybody's got a dream and wants to do this and yada yada yada. And I think it's a very nice composition on that level, and I think it's a good way to close the album in that regard. However, I'm not sure how well it fits with the rest of the songs here. It just, for me, I don't think it's on the level of those first 7 tracks, first of all, but irregardless of that, it's not even its musicality. We have things of different styles throughout this album we hear. but it's just, I think the content of the lyrics, it just seems like a bit out of place here. I'm not quite sure why, but it's a lovely song. And it ends things well, but it does stick out a bit.
We're right at the same place on the end of this album. It's near perfect as far as musicality goes of how you would always want to end the album, in my opinion. It starts off small, it crescendos into this. I wrote hallelujah for the everyman in my notes just because the gospelness of it is overcoming. And where I talked about a parallel, or even throughout these character driven pieces, these everyman pieces, even though it sings like that, it just doesn't seem to stick the landing, for lack of better words, the way Moving Out does, or really the way the rest of the album does. So it sounds great, but I'm with you. The lyrical content doesn't necessarily, it's not on the same level as the rest of the album.
Yeah.
It really isn't. I try to say it the nicest way I can and the most respectful way I can, but it doesn't do its job. Musically, it does. Musically, it ends the album perfect. And if you're not really hardcore critically listening, you're probably leaving on a super high note. But after listening to the album like 15, 20 times this week, it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Even from first listen, I've always thought this was just not up to the level of those first 7 songs. I've always felt that way.
But I'm with you. It could have fit right behind She's Always a Woman.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's still, I think this is one of those cases where the quest for quality is ruthless. And when we have this many killer songs around, we got to be harsher on stuff that really, we've discussed much worse songs on the podcast for sure than either of these last 2 songs, but it's just we have to look at it as a whole. Yeah.
But I mean, Silver Lining Playbook, hidden track, we get a little throwback to The Stranger on the way out of the album. So that's a cool piece. But I don't put that inside of judging this last song. But
I don't either.
No, but it's cool to hear The Stranger again on the way out. It just adds that cinematic vibe of almost this whole album.
Yeah. No, he came through with a lot of beautiful stories for us and the world. Because like I said, these songs have just always been there. I mean, I can't even imagine, like, I feel like it's a question for our parents, but it's like, can you imagine the world before these songs existed? Like, what was it like? Because it's just hard to not think of these songs as part of, like, the fabric of America.
Agreed.
At
Very
this
well.
point.
Very well put.
As it is with much of the Billy Joel songbook, and even some of the people who don't love all of his stuff have to concede, like, The Stranger is really where it's at. Like, there was a woman that my parents and I met on the light rail on the way to the concert. My parents attended, but they didn't sit with us. Sorry if that makes me a bad son, but oops. And We Didn't Start the Fire came up, and the one they said, yeah, I definitely prefer 70s Billy Joel to 80s Billy Joel. Though I like We Didn't Start the Fire, but not everybody does.
Was that the Fish Girl?
No. Different girl. But yeah, that's when I thought of people not liking Billy Joel, a lot of it's because of We Didn't Start the Fire, actually.
Yeah.
A quite maligned song. I enjoy it, but I don't think it's on the level of these songs, though. But let's be real. Yeah, this one. I feel like we kind of know how this is going to go, but just a formality. What's your grade for the album?
Stranger is a masterclass in songwriting. Billy Joel is a master composer. I tried not to make this whole podcast me just saying how genius of a composer, a musician he is, but this album, doing my best to listen to it with a non-biased ear, is almost front to back flawless, and flawless on a level that we rarely get to listen to in this podcast. Only I only say that because of how trained he is. There's so much going. We could have spent 3 hours talking about the chord changes and the way that the compositions throughout this album are set up. It's a very close to a flawless album for me. I give it an A.
Yeah, it's a A. I mean, was there a question? I felt like knowing that it's like, this is, I already knew going, it's like, well, this is obviously an A. And yep, it's an A. I mean, even if the last two songs don't quite stack up, they're still not bad songs at all. And they could have completely sucked and it still could have been an A because those other songs are pretty close to flawless.
Yeah, it's not like it was an easy A, but it was an A, you know. I feel like it would be hard. I would love to see some counterpoints of where this album fails, and I would love to talk back and forth if somebody has that opinion, because I would like to see where it comes from. Musically, it's just I tried. I tried to go in there and be like, nah, some of these have to be pretty empty. You know, we're just used to seeing them on commercials and stuff. Now he's a master, and he gave us a master class in storytelling and in composition, just in singer songwriter. Period.
Yep. And after that, after this, Billy Joel was a stranger to no one.
Heard that. Heard that.
But now this might be a harder question. What's your favorite song on the album?
Italian Restaurant. Scenes from Italian Restaurant. It's not even hard for me. It's really the one that for me I remember before the other ones, and that's crazy because look at the songs that are on this album. But that one, I don't know if it. I mean, it was definitely played around my house when I was young, but I just have the memory of that song. It stuck with me for so long. I love it. It's such a mini movie. It never gets old. I love seeing really good karaoke people do this. That's a jammer.
It's a fun one to hear at karaoke for sure. But maybe this is childhood nostalgia peeking in the funny stories I heard about this song, but my favorite's Only the Good Die Young.
Yeah, man.
It's just that great good time party song with a sense of humor, and I love it.
Yeah, it's hard, you know, it's hard to say anyone stands above, but got to be those.
I mean, yeah. Though it's not like I'm gonna fight you if you tell me She's Always a Woman's your favorite song.
I was gonna say, what's your number two? Mine's She's Always a Woman.
That's probably number two, but no, Moving Out's number two. I do love Moving Out. See, any of them can be your favorite song. There's pretty much not a wrong answer. It's fine. It's just, it's fine. And I'm glad that we got to do this one-off, special one-off after the concert that we attended to talk about The Stranger, because I don't know when we would have discussed it coming up, honestly, besides if we hadn't had this opportunity.
Yeah, man, a much needed one. That was cool.
Yeah, and it's fun to go back and listen to those classic 70s albums because we don't always get to do them. They're not always quite as popular amongst the listeners, but they're a lot of fun to do, though, I think.
Darn Skippy.
Yeah. But we are going to go back to reality and the real world next week. Because, folks, we have some major new releases. The one we're doing now is already up, but we've got a couple of other major ones on the docket after that we are, at this point, obligated to cover. That's just kind of how it is. But we're also excited to cover them because there's certainly going to be a lot to dive into. But first off, one Ed Sheeran released a new album at the end of September titled Autumn Variations, and that is going to be the topic of our next episode. I think it's pretty fitting to do what he did next after Subtract. He once worked with the same producer, Aaron Dessner, and his first album released on his own label too.
There you go.
So
he made me a new fan on Subtract, so
yeah, same here. And I think it's just we'll discuss it more next week, but he's just at a really interesting point in his career right now that I don't think we're seeing with any other artist currently.
He's in Fortnite. My son
Yeah.
and I were playing Fortnite, and a virtual like concert interactive thing was going on. It was wild, man.
Yeah, he's just at a very interesting place in 2023, and I'm excited to dive more into that next week. I don't want to spoil it all here, so there's that. But yep. Until next time, we're going to enjoy some autumn variations, I guess. What a neat title there, but we'll be living through some of them this month of October before we talk about the latest from Mr. Sheeran. So until then, just stay peaceful and variate.
Peace.